I assume you cut these.
No, absolutely. So you can feel free.
I was going to be a coach. I enjoyed sports through high school and college, and I went in the Army and thought that I should come back and become a coach. And while I was in the Army, I started thinking about either being an attorney or going in with for the United States, where you go overseas as a consulate or something. And I was thinking of going to Washington U, and I made registration at Albany Law School, and they accepted me, and I came home from the service, went to law school, and come out of law school and started practicing here in Jamestown. My wife wanted to stay in Albany because she was from that area, but I always liked the area here, and I enjoy hunting and fishing, which we have very close by. And so I went to law school, graduated from law school, came back here and set up practice with Joe Gerasi for 13 years.
How did that happen? How did you guys connect?
I came back here, and very frankly, I was broke, and I had some debt, and I needed a job. And the only job, you'll like this one. I interviewed with Tubby Scarpino and Ross Spoto, a couple of other fellows I can't remember. And the best offer I had was $30 a week from Tubby. And I told Tubby, I said, geez, thanks for the offer, but I can't really take it. So I got a job working as a claims adjuster. In fact, John Goodell had just left just before me. He was a claims adjuster for Travelers. We worked for Howard Walder. He offered me $100 in a car. Well, hell, in them days, Mickey Mantle only made $100, so I felt I was doing good. And in fact, Bill Cass and I have talked about it over the years. We would have signed a lifetime contract for $50 to $100, but that was my start. I started with the insurance company, and Howard Walder knew Joe Gerasi quite well, and apparently he talked to him about he had this young lawyer working for him that if he ever needed a partner or anybody, let him know. Well, Joe gave me a call, and we had a chat and got together, and so we became partners. I was with him for 13 years until he became the county executive, and then I went in with Art Bailey. I was there for, gosh, I don't know, almost 20 years probably. I was with Joe. We had young fellow, Jeff Weesey came with us out of school, Dick Fessenden, and Paul King, if you remember him, the assistant, or he became the district attorney. And then when I was with Art, we had several fellows there. We had Mike Goldman, Joe Moran, I'm trying to think, Warren Erickson, John Ward. We had a bunch of guys there. Charlie Loveland was there for a while. And then I terminated, at that time, I terminated that. And then I went in with my nephew. My nephew came in with me, John Lamancuso, who's now the city court judge, and Phil Calla. And then later on, Bill Duncanson came in with us. And then later on, we had John Vanstrom and Greg Edwards and Randy Lewis, Steve Cass, who was with us until he became a judge. And then in 2001, I was ready to retire, and Chuck D'Angelo prevailed upon me to maybe come over there and merge our offices. And I felt a little badly. I wanted the boys to have a place to work and the secretary, so I went over there, and I thought it was just going to be a short period, and here I'm still over there. I'm enjoying it. I'm not working as hard as I used to, but I'm enjoying it.
When you came back, was there really an Italian, Swedish, not only mentality from a population viewpoint, but also regarding professionalism as well? The fact that you would work with you mentioned you interviewed with Spoto, Scarpino, Gerasi. They're not Swedish.
Right.
Is that by design?
Yes, I must say yes. I didn't like it. My dad was a great one to bring us kids up, that you take a man for what he is. But I found out early in my practice that there was that element of I don't know if you want me to, no, I better not mention names, but there was that element where the Swedish attorneys didn't treat a young Italian attorney with the same, what do I want to say, the same manner in which they would, say, a young Swedish attorney coming into town. But over the years, believe it or not, it developed that everybody became much friendlier. I've gotten along with all the lawyers. I've had a couple of bad experiences, but that was early in my practice. And that was, I think, I'm not sure if it was, when I came back here, the older lawyers didn't appreciate the younger lawyers coming into town and taking their practice. And that goes for both. I can tell you, my Italian colleagues were very unhappy when I came back to practice. In fact, they didn't want me to practice here. They even suggested I leave town and maybe go to a bigger city. And hey, practicing law was tough in them days, and we didn't have all that practice, and the money wasn't that great, and whatever you took away from another lawyer, I mean, that was taken from them. But it got much better. I would say after into the 70s, the older boys passed away and got out of practice, and it developed a lot. But the lawyers at that time were more cordial, friendly towards each other, worked with each other. There wasn't that element of nationality, if that's what you want to call it. I can remember Tooby telling us how he stayed overnight there a few nights waiting for this fella to come back, and sure as heck he came back and he shot him in the butt. Then he got in trouble for that. But Tooby was a good guy. He was a rough, gruff guy. When I first come back here, he gave me much trouble. In fact, when I remember one time, he really lit into me, vulgarly and otherwise, and I hung up on him, and I wouldn't call him back. He kept calling 2-3 days, and I wouldn't call him back. And finally, Joe Gerasi came in and says, "Hey, look, you got to settle this thing. The guy's driving me crazy. He's calling me." So I called Tooby, and I explained to him that, hey, I may be young, I might be kind of naive, but I'm certainly able to take care of myself, and it's too bad that you're not younger, I come down and we'd settle this once and for all. Believe it or not, after that, he treated me, you couldn't treat anybody nicer. Always good to me. I used to love to go up to his office. He had that darn spittoon, and he'd sit there and he'd talk to you and spit in the spittoon, But he was a colorful, very colorful person. Howard was a very intelligent young lawyer, good lawyer. But he had his tendency in the afternoons to go over at Mr. B's and have a couple libations, and in the afternoon he was a little difficult to deal with.
Theatrical.
But he was a nice guy. Howard and I were members of the Dirty Dozen for many years until he passed away, and I had many, many enjoyable times with Howard. No, Ross was a good lawyer, and Doug is a good lawyer. He'd been a very good lawyer.
Mike Lombardo.
He was my favorite. The one thing I can always remember about Mike, and I had a lot of trials with him, is he never spoke down to a witness or the jury. You see these guys that come in there with all this verbiage and try to impress the witnesses in the court and the jurors. Mike was down to earth, one of the nicest, softest speaking people you ever met in your life, and a very, very excellent criminal and trial lawyer. And I can still remember one of the first cases I had with him was a cow case. I represented a fellow who sold some cows to his client, and for one reason or another there was a defect in the cows, and so he brought the action. We were up before Judge Fancher, and I remember we were all ready to sum up, and Mike says, "Your Honor, may we approach the bench?" So he and I approached the bench. He looked at me and he says, "Lucian," he says, "before I get a verdict," he says, "I want you to put in your damages." I'd gotten so wrapped up in the case I forgot to put my damages in. But that's the kind of a guy he was. He was such a great, honest, warm guy. He would never stick it to you. That's, I guess, is what I want to say. And it was amazing that he would bring me up to the bench and tell me that I hadn't finished my case before I was ready to do my summation. I mean, and that's the kind of a guy he was.
I still, to this day, you're a legend, you and Spoto having lunch at Lysandro.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Oh, he's my ultimate pessimist. Jesus Christ. Nothing is good for him. Nothing. He's got the world by the ass.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember Sid Hughes.
I do.
Sid Hughes was district attorney on one case. We had a fellow was charged with arson in the first degree, and Sidney prosecuted the case. Joe and I defended it, and we got a no cause. And I can still remember Sid steaming out of the courtroom and calling Joe and I every name in the book. He was really hot, really hot. He felt he couldn't lose that case. He had Ed O'Connor, who was a district attorney when I first came back here. He became a judge. He was a colorful fella, nice Irish fella from Dunkirk. He enjoyed a good time. He was a good judge. He wouldn't take any abuse on a stand, and he'd move you along. He enjoyed his vibrations in the afternoon, so it was better to get him in the morning, because if he come back in the afternoon, sometimes he's a little rough. When I was really young, Joe Gerasi and I would go over to Gandy's, and we had a little get-together with Al McKee and Al Olson and
Was Marcus Conley?
Mark Conley, and we would solve a lot of problems there. But believe it or not, we solved a lot of cases there.
Yeah.
But anyway, Al Olson, I got to tell you this one. Did you know Heimbaugh, Lyle Heimbaugh?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, as you know, Lyle Heimbaugh's father owned that railroad and had left him pretty well off. Well, Al Olson used to really get frosted. He was in with Bob Booty and Olson, and Heimbaugh had a desk in the back, and they would load it up with all this mail. And Al would get furious because he'd go back there and here'd be thousands of dollars of coupons, checks, that he never opened. And yet he wouldn't pay his bills, you know. And Al used to come to those. I remember coming at lunch and he'd be cussing and cursing how he had to go over and pay a check for Heimbaugh's to keep the utilities going, you know. And as you know, Bill Cass and I have been friends since we went, before law school, we played sports in high school together. And we played Community League baseball. And it was funny in heck because he was in the service the same time as I was. And I had not seen him that summer. And go to Albany. I'm standing in line registering, and I look, and I kept thinking, gosh, I know that fella. So I goes, oh, and sure as heck, here's Bill Cass and I were registering together. And we've hunted and fished together ever since Albany. We hunted and fished in Albany. We've done it ever since. We've been to out west several times, been up to Canada several times, and we've been very good friends. Our families have been good together. We had some battles, and you'd think we hated each other. And then it was all right, what the hell. Same with Bob Seidel. I mean, Bob was such a great guy.
Yeah.
And then we get done, and he never wanted to go home, you know. We'd end up at the bongo room, get half schnockered. All in all, it's been a good life. It's been a good life.